that the event was doing poorly this time around. Critical 3 was doing poorly, and we didn't know that.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new Slump Meal video. I hope you're having a good day. Today's video will be a sad one, because today's video is most likely the last video going over Creator Clash 3, iDubbbz's, and Anissa for the foreseeable. I wanted to make one more video just wrapping up with some of the latest updates from a couple of the fighters, and even one message from iDubbbz himself. On one of my previous videos going over Creator Clash being cancelled, we went over Nathan Barnett or Dad's video talking about Creator Clash 3, and he has uploaded a follow-up video which I want to get into.
There have been a lot of comments and questions that I would like to answer, things I do have answers for, but I just can't do it here because it's a lot. So I'll put this out there if there's anyone who would like to talk, have an interview or whatever, like Nicholas DiOrio or some of these other channels that have been covering this. I could come on a stream or a show of anyone's and just kind of get it all out.
Which is also something we will be briefly covering today. Nathan, or Dad, actually ended up going on Nicholas DiOrio's stream to talk to him and got asked some pretty vital questions that I want to go over.
Mostly just answers to what you've been asking. Like why I did get into it, why a lot of the other boxers got into Critical 3 knowing it was a risk and probably a good chance it could be a failure. I have good reason for why I did that. I mean, I touched on that a little bit, I thought, in my video, but it seems to be there's a lot of stuff people are asking. So if anyone wants to talk about it, I'm down.
I mean, when it comes to fighters going on to Creator Clash 3, some of the newer ones, but definitely uneducated and basically had no idea what had happened in previous Creator Clashes and the drama around any of that. And I can imagine some of the people that had gone on previous ones went out on loyalty and the fact that, you know, they wanted to genuinely raise money for charity and they thought it'd be different this time. It's not hard to see why people went on this event, just that they really shouldn't have. Before we get into Nicholas DiOrio's interview with Dad and some of the things that I picked out from it, I do want to quickly play a question that I asked Dad on his most recent stream.
Ask RQ how transparent Anissa and Ian were.
I think, as far as I know, I said everything. I don't know what else to say. I said it all in the interview, in my videos. I don't know how transparent they were because I never found out. The only thing I didn't, I don't want to get into it all over again, but the only thing I didn't hear, and all of us didn't hear, was that the event was doing bad.
Which I've got to say is a big only, because that is a huge thing that was going on behind the scenes. According to Anissa and iDubbbz, even going into this, they didn't think that this event would do very well, and they knew very quickly that this event wasn't doing very well. And the fact that they weren't transparent with their fighters and weren't saying, look, listen, this event is really not doing very well, we're not selling the tickets that we thought we were, this is going worse than we imagined it would, even though that we thought originally it wouldn't go very well. The fact that there wasn't a conversation like that with the fighters is diabolical.
Poorly this time around. Critical 3 was doing poorly, and we didn't know that. I wish we had been told that, so we all could have tried to help fix this.
To be honest though, and I get where Dad is coming from here, but I don't think any of the fighters, even if they did know, would be able to fix this. This was such a big issue. The fact that it wasn't doing well, the fact that they knew when going into this event probably wouldn't do very well, the fact that they then dropped the content cop on top of it that made things 10 times worse, there wasn't anything that the fighters could do even if they knew that it was failing so catastrophically. I'm really trying to think of possible things that they would be able to do to make this event successful after everything if they did know, but I'm really struggling to think of anything. Regardless of that, they still should have told the fighters, they still should have been more transparent, and that is one of the biggest downfalls of Creator Clash and iDubbbz and Anissa, is a lack of transparency.
And then the decision was to then go make that video, and it's like, well, they thought, well, it's failing anyway, we'll just bury it without telling anyone. That's unfair. That's all. I think, other than that, I think we found out everything pretty fast throughout the 3 years. I don't know, though. Because I don't know what was going on that I didn't know about, you know what I mean? So that's hard to answer.
I do think as well that lots of fighters had different experiences with transparency. When you look at the things that people like Tubbo, Satnap had been saying, it's very clear that they had very much less transparency than somebody like Harley or Dad. And saying that, they didn't really have any transparency to begin with. Everybody knows that this event was poorly run, but just these fighters coming out and saying that they weren't told certain things, saying that some people were told things and that we weren't, is really tragic to hear, and my heart really does go out to those fighters. But now I do quickly want to go over some bits that I picked out of the Nicholas DiOrio and Dad interview. Of course, I highly recommend that you go and watch this, as this is like a 3-hour behemoth, and I'm not going to be covering every single question that Nicholas DiOrio asked Dad and Dad's responses in this video.
So that was it. Tweet.
Yes,
Nicholas
20 for both
Memorial.
first 2 years, and then the third year was the only time it changed. It went down 5,000 for year 3.
Of course, this is in regards to the money side of things, which I'm glad that Dad has clarified. There was loads of numbers flying about in regards to what money they received, the fight purses, all of that type of stuff, the bonuses. So I'm glad that Dad has cleared this up, and I'm glad that there is a fighter outside of Harley that is being so incredibly transparent and down to share this information.
I did ask early because I was like, I'm not getting screwed this time.
Oh, so you got
How does that
paid.
sound? I should think about it. So I got paid early. I don't want to say Harley did, but I think Harley did.
Harley confirmed to me that he did.
I do think it's an incredibly smart move and the right thing to do in this situation. If you are a fighter that did end up fighting on Creator Clash 2, you've seen the failure that happened there, but you've still got a little bit of faith in Ian, Anissa, the Creator Clash as a brand and this whole charity aspect or whatever, and you want to fight on Creator Clash 3, asking for the money before is a pretty good decision. I know Dad said he only knew of Harley, who also asked for it early, but I'd be really interested to see if anybody else asked for their money early. I'd be very interested to see about that, but like I said earlier, not many of the fighters are being as transparent as people like Dad and Harley.
Yes.
Because Harley and I were both like, this is probably not going to happen. Let's get the money before it gets canceled.
I mean, if this is based in truth, and this is something that did happen, the fact that, you know, even fighters were going, you know, this might not happen, let's just make sure we get our money, just because there is a strong possibility that this event actually doesn't go ahead and something does go wrong, is so insanely funny to me.
So I did get my 15,000 for Creator Clash 3, year 3.
Wait, was that actually a conversation? You're like, there's a pretty solid chance this thing is gonna blow up, so we better get the money as quickly as
It was a conversation I had. The person I had that's convincing me to join or asked me to join, that person at the whole company, not Ian or Anissa, had a long conversation with this person saying, I don't know if I want to do this because I'm really tired now after getting beaten up so much in my life. I did the Game Grumps tour twice. I was talking about how my body was just tired from the last 2 years of touring. I like jumped off the stage every night, diving over the audience. Like, I beat myself up for the Game Grumps tour the last 2 years, and this was right after Creator Clash 2. So I went from 2 years of boxing into 2 years of touring, and I go really hard. I like do backflips and front flips on stage. I dive into trash cans. I just kind of go bonkers. I jump off the balcony.
Yeah, you don't seem like a passenger. You seem like, even in your...
It's interesting to hear that these conversations of doubt and worry were happening behind the scenes. I mean, it's something we all assumed as creators and viewers alike were probably happening realistically, but it's very interesting to hear a ex-fighter on one of these events actually talk out about these said doubts and conversations that were happening. And in regards to what Nicholas Dury was said, that Dad very much feels like somebody who puts all his all into the fights. That's why I do feel very sympathetic towards people like Dad and the other people that were training incredibly hard, because they put a lot of effort into actually trying to make Creator Clash 3 a proper event.
That was because I was nervous this whole time about the ticket sales, so I was like, I gotta count every ticket, and I went and physically counted every ticket that was sold on the picture of the arena, and I made a mark on every one I had. It took me hours, and I wrote, okay, 137 sold in this section, 137 in this section, and then I like added them all up, and it was about 4,000-ish tickets were sold. And then that's when they were blocking off the top at that point. So then it was like, we only need to sell 10,000.
Did they ever tell people why they blocked off the top? Because, by the way, I had friends who bought tickets up there.
Again, there's just another huge lack of transparency, not talking about why they closed off the top of the arena. Why is it something they did? Well, we will never know. There are so many questions for Creator Clash directly, not the fighters that, of course, were gearing up to be fighting on the event. There are just so many questions directly for Creator Clash 3 in Anissa that people have that will 100% go unanswered, because Ian and Anissa will never do a sit-down video where they go through a bunch of questions and actually answer them properly.
There was 4,000 tickets, which is almost half of the arena sold, and that was in March, I think, is when I did the camping trip, and Ian told me this, because then I said, hey, I counted all the tickets, and it says it's 4,000 sold.
Interesting, too. So the March camping trip was like very shortly after the Ethan Klein call-out stream from H3. So he was getting ready for the Content Cop all the way back then.
I think that's so funny, because that also goes to show that Ian really didn't care about Creator Clash 3. Him and Anissa, in their own words, already knew this event probably wasn't going to do the best. So, you know, shit to the wind, he just decided to drop the Content Cop. He had absolutely zero care in the world what the Content Cop might actually do to Creator Clash as an event. He simply just didn't care, and this is very clear.
I said, I counted 4,000 tickets, and Ian goes, oh, I wouldn't focus on those numbers so much because Ticketmaster does tricky things with how they make sales. basically they make it look like the arena is selling more than it is. Because if you look at it, when I was counting this, I
Wait,
was
they
like,
make
this
it
is
look like
odd.
the arena is selling more than it is? That's what he
Yes,
said? So wait, he was
yes.
telling you
Well,
they actually had
wait, wait.
sold more seats?
I don't want to put words in his mouth. He didn't say that, but that's what he alluded to. It's like Ticketmaster does tricky things to promote sales is basically what he said.
With what Nathan is saying, there is something that did happen. I find that incredibly funny. The absolute cope of iDubbbz, because, you know, ultimately, as they've said now, iDubbbz and Anissa are going to shot themselves in the foot by saying that they knew this event wouldn't do very well, because it's so funny then hearing their cope excuses when fighters ask them questions about it. I also quickly do want to touch on the fact that Ren from Corridor Cruise, somebody who was meant to be fighting on Creator Clash 3, has actually made several Instagram stories just talking about how disappointed he is with the fact that Creator Clash 3 is cancelled. I mean, this has kind of been the sentiment of a lot of fighters, and my heart does go out to them. Of course, I have my criticisms for quite a few of them, and I understand some of the comments that people have been leaving in regards to the fighters, but I do feel sympathetic towards them. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the final thing I want to go over for this video, and potentially the final Creator Clash video that I make, is Ian's response, or lack of response should I say. The only public response that has been made, it comes from directly his Discord server, and it's a message, and this was the message. Someone in the Discord server says, look, I don't know if I'm allowed to bring up what Ludwig said in regards to Creator Clash, and iDubbbz put, you're allowed to talk about it. I just choose not to, because it's not something I want to occupy my brain with. Which I think is such a funny response, because for one, we all know iDubbbz doesn't occupy his brain with much to begin with, because it is so clear that he does care, and that it is occupying his brain, because he's actively saying it out loud. He's actively putting that statement out into the world. Somebody who doesn't care or doesn't occupy their brain with that type of thing isn't going to tell you that directly. I also think Ian's response makes for an incredible juxtaposition to Anissa's response, which has been just having a mental breakdown on Twitter, constantly tweeting out regrettable things about Creator Clash, herself, and Ian, where Ian's is one message, which, you know, there's quite a lot of layers there of copium, but it's one message in regards to Anissa's several tweets. I do ultimately think that will be iDubbbz's only real addressal or response to the stuff that's happened with Creator Clash 3 since his last video where he mentioned leaving Creator Clash 3 and a few of the other things. But ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I pretty much think that is all for Creator Clash 3, and with this video possibly being the final video on Creator Clash. Probably not Ian and Anissa, they will probably keep doing stuff that I want to talk about, but at least for Creator Clash 3, because the event is cancelled. There's only so much other fighters can say, and at this point, if fighters were going to say anything, they would have said it already, and the things they've said we've already covered. I really can't see there being any more major updates, but of course, if there are, I will be covering them on this channel. Thank you everybody for watching today's YouTube video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribing and hit the notification bell, and once you're done there, you might as well leave a comment saying your favourite bit of this entire controversy with Creator Clash, Ian, and Anissa, and your thoughts on this video. But I've been your host Samuel, and I'll catch you in the next Slop in Your video. Goodbye.